I'm obsessed, I admit it. I'm a biodiversity junkie, and I'm now going to just talk about a little of what I found as I fossick around below a Banksia tree, as I have done for many, many years. Okay, so recyclers, we're talking about massive biomass here. I don't think people fully realise just how much biomass there is out there in the Banksia woodland that we don't even see. That's probably most of it just there, at least a representative thereof. One of my favourite groups of animals, of course, are jewel beetles, and it has taken me 30 years to photograph 1,000 Australian species in life. I've only got 400 to go, but I've learnt how to resurrect the dead using Photoshop, because I obviously can't be at all places at all times. So, and part of the recycling crew, at least for some of their lives, are the ants. This came to my front porch light not long ago. It's clearly, I live in Banksia woodland, or what was once Banksia woodland. Recently I've been involved in a survey on Brand Highway, is Iopolo Reserve, a photographic driven report, and in these modern days of digital photography, to have an actual photographic record of what you've collected is so much more impacting on your client than having a long list of Latin names. And I don't have to kill everything I catch either. So we're still in the land of recyclers, getting right down to dung. And that's one of the connections intimate connections I have with vertebrates. There is a book called Grasshopper Country. We have a wealth of grasshoppers in this country, so it's not surprising that some of them have adapted to a Banksia woodland environment. Weevils, I'm very partial to weevils, largest family of living creatures. As I've said later on in another weevil picture, there's almost a weevil for every plant occasion. We have a unique Western Australian moth, unique to the southwest. It used to be called the dryandra moth as a common name, so perhaps it should be changed to Banksia moth. Yeah, is this gorgeous animal? Now we're getting into a really big area. Those animals that chew and shape our vegetation, the leaf chewers, of which we having such a great biodiversity, floral biodiversity in this country, especially on this side. We also have a corresponding remarkable biodiversity in the leaf-chewing insects. A weevil, in this case a leaf-pruning weevil, which most are, at least in the adult stage, for every occasion. And there's a new book being produced in the Cyro series on Australian cockroaches by Dr. David Knowles, and so I'm busily photographing every cockroach species I come across, as long as it's not American or German. The children especially that I showed, this is a favourite because these are very strong beetles. They squeak and they're great burrowers, so only the strongest and bravest kids can hold one in their hand and feel the strength of it as it burrows through their fingers. Often it's a throwdown situation, but I have a special soft area for when they do that. We have over 80 species of these things that get their spores. They feed on fungal mycelia and fungal fruiting bodies as well, truffles. Sucking fungivores. Not very many people know many. I've known a few, and they are fascinating creatures, and I've never sucked a mushroom in my life, but they can do that sort of stuff, so very interesting. I found an exploding population of Argentine ants coming back, and they just about raped and pillaged all the ground fauna, and most of the underbark fauna was very depauperate, but they favoured the sapsuckers. So there was amazing biodiversity of various leaf hoppers and plant hoppers enjoying sap because they've been protected and nurtured by Argentine ants. So sadly, I do spend too much time in front of a computer and Photoshop editing photos, but it's at least an enjoyable pastime given the beauty of the creatures I have to work with. Most of our flowering plants are pollinated by insects, not birds, would you believe, or dare I say even honey possums, but the fruits of the pollinators' labours, whether they be honey possum or otherwise, often fall to the ground, and some of them are claimed by these sorts of creatures that sucking the goodness out of the seed, so therefore controlling the populations of the plants. I'm on a bit of a moth kick at the moment, in my association with the WA Insect Study Society, and I often light trap with a mercury vapour or an ultraviolet light trap all over the southwest. And we don't have very many moths that mimic wasps in Western Australia. There are more in the east, but this is one of our local species that's the first time I'd come across this one. And the Morrison, when I was doing the Iopolo Reserve, the Morrison was in flower, and I was, of course, wanting to photograph its major pollinators, and so one came along and I took advantage of it. And we do have some very strange pollinating native bees that have quite big heads, and thanks to Terry Houston for enlightening me on this one. And this is a classic Banksia, November Banksia, healthy Banksia woodland animal, as long as there's not too many honeybees harassing them continually. And for those of you who like trigger plants, so these little fellows, this is quite a big one, so I suspect a big trigger plant. We have some of the most beautiful jumping spiders in Australia, in this state, in the southwest. Most of them are undescribed, and I've been through a very intense phase about photographing them. Slender predators for slender prey. Very strange beetle I've never seen before. Don't even know a genus on this one. Pit-trapped at Iopolo. We have abundant velvet ants, so-called velvet ants. Another example of a poor common name. They're numerous. Lots of biodiversity in our sandy Banksia woodland. The model for that moth you just recently saw. An icon of that sandplain. Few more predators under bark, on the ground, in amongst the Banksia litter, very fast, and ants playing multiple roles in the environment. A very fancy looking predator, mantis, trampoline spider, robber flies, or assel flies as I call them, centipedes, large and small, wolf spiders, our largest local scorpion, which I show under UV light to the kids, glows very nicely. Big mean hunters, beetles. Most painful animal you may ever get stung by, so I'm told. I've never had the displeasure. If you went to a place where there were no, which is a rare place, where there were no honeybees, and then watched what was visiting the flowers, and then introduced a hive of honeybees in there, well, what was pollinating the flowers, the native bees and other native species, was totally forced out, and honeybees took over. So I call them aerial rabbits. But
please thank with me, David, for a fantastic talk.